She just got out of the shower. Otherwise, I'd invite her over to talk to you. But she can hear you, though.
She's half Lebanese and half Scottish. You know what I am? I'm half Emirati from Dubai, and half, my mom is American, but mostly Scottish as well. Scottish and English.
Well, you guys are almost cousins.
Yeah. I saw your wife on the Christmas episode when you guys were relaxing together. I actually left a message on the chat. I was hoping she would read it, but she didn't see it, I think.
Oh, really? On my chat?
Yeah, I was watching you guys because I was sitting with my wife also on the Christmas thing, and I turned on the TV and I saw you guys were doing the exact same thing.
Oh, that's cool. I'm sorry you didn't get to your what was the question you asked?
Nothing. I was just saying I'm excited to have you on the show.
Oh, cool. Yeah. What was your handle? What is your handle on YouTube?
Leo and Longevity.
Leo and Longevity. I remember it. She remembers it. So, yeah, it's an interesting story, man. Someday, we have lots of time. And the story of me and my wife, I don't know if you know it, how I came to be in love with her and how I met her and all that. And then, or you don't know, I know you don't know, but, the way she was raised, raised Muslim and brought to her father was a Muslim from the Middle East and came here to America, and he just didn't want his daughters to be like Americanized. But of course the daughters wanted to live normal American life. So they had a lot of resentment towards their father, and it was bitter and went on for years and years and years. I don't think she even talked to her dad for 20 years. And then the guy just kind of, I don't know, she forgave him and just reached out to him. And then he started talking to her, and they really get along well. She gets along better. Like, she has 5 sisters, and the other ones are all a mess. Well, not all of them. One of them's not a mess. But anyways, her dad's super cool. I didn't like him for the longest time because I knew how he treated her when she was young. And I always thought he'd be lucky I don't smack the shit out of him if I ever see him, because he's kind of abusive to her, Yeah. But again, it was kind of more of his culture than anything. It wasn't like he was a mean guy. But anyways, I met him for the first time, a couple of months ago. He came up here and brought me 24 cannolis, and I took him fishing, and he loves fishing, loves it. I took him out fishing with me. He was loved it. So now it's like, it's my father-in-law. He's a good dude. He likes me. He's a big fan. Pretty interesting.
Your wife is a Christian, right? She converted to Christianity and she's a religious Christian, right? Like yourself.
Yeah. Yes.
Which denomination do you guys belong to, if I might ask?
We're just kind of Protestant, Bible reading Christians. We don't really necessarily adhere to any one. I don't believe in that. I just kind of, the Bible to me is what, if God wanted anything else to be said, he would have said it, the way he wanted to say it. But there's a lot of ritualistic type of things in the other things, and I just stay away from it. I just, keep my faith based in the Bible and between me and God.
True. That's pretty interesting that you mentioned that. Actually, if you think about it, other than Islam and Christianity, all the other Abrahamic religions are extremely ritualistic. Like, for example, Judaism is mostly rituals, less than belief. Oh, yeah. And actually, there's another religion that not many people know about called the Medians or something like that. They live in Iran, and they are actually followers of John the Baptist. Not many people know about them. And they follow...
Yeah, I think I've heard of them.
Yeah, they've been following John the Baptist since like Jesus's time. Yeah. They never followed Jesus. They just stick with John the Baptist. And they're really into water. Like, they live by rivers because of the baptism, That's where it comes from. Anyway, Gunnar, I guess I didn't introduce you onto the show since we had a connection issue, but this is Gunnar Lindbloom. Gunnar is from one of the most legendary families in Detroit. Detroit has, for the followers of my podcast, I've had Gene Borello on before. Gene is a nephew, I think, or a grandnephew of a famous person from one of New York's 5 families. But Gene is an informant. By the way, Gunnar, you don't have any kind of informant stuff in your past, right? Yeah, exactly.
No, I've never cooperated. I just did 13 years, and I could have cooperated. The very day I was arrested, the FBI came in and said, you want to make this go away? And I said, how is that? And he says, you know how? I said, I don't. He said, tell me about Paulie and your Uncle Pete and blah, 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 blah. I said, you got the wrong freaking guy, man. He's like, you're going to go away for 30 years. He's like, you did a lot of bad stuff, man. You're going to go away for 30 years. You know that, right? I'm like, man, maybe not. He's like, nah, well, win or lose or draw. He's like, it doesn't matter to me. I'll go home to my wife tonight. You're going to be in a cage for a long time. So here's my card. Give me a call if you change your mind. He hands me the card. I took the card and I flung it at him. I was like, nah, I'm not me, man. I'm good. But anyways, I'm not judging anybody who cooperates.
No, we're not judging. The reason why I mentioned this, Gunnar, just to let you know, is because, Michael Franzese is very popular on YouTube. And Michael Franzese, I had a Gene Borello clip that sort of went a little bit viral in which Gene is talking about Michael. And, Gene is on John Aliti's show. And John is also follows me on Instagram, and we have similar political views and stuff like that. So anyway, basically I got a lot of comments from people on YouTube that hate Gene and keep calling him a rat because he said that Franzese sat down with the police and so on. I just want people to know the reason I brought Gene on it's not that I don't like Gene. Gene's actually, I chat with him all the time. I don't judge him or anything like that. But the reason I had him on was really to talk about the downfall of the New York Mafia, because it's not what it used to be. Anyway, back to the point, to introduce Gunnar. Gunnar is from a family that one of the founding families of the Detroit Partnership. There was a mafia in Buffalo. There was a mafia in Chicago. There was even something in Florida for a while under Santos Traficante, I think. Yeah. There was something in New York. And there's something also that was low key in Detroit called the Detroit Partnership. And your family, your mother's family, it's interesting. You're a half-breed like me and like your wife. And your mother's family is basically one of the legends of that area. Can you tell our audience just briefly a little bit about that?
Well, it's interesting. For a couple of things, like you said were, as in past tense. I assure you it's still present tense. The thing is, I guess, if for anybody who doesn't really know about Detroit, Cosa Nostra, the Mafia, whatever you want to call it, it does have a very low-key presence in the organized crime in the underworld. It has always maintained a position on the National Commission of the bosses of bosses. All the bosses of Detroit are always very close and tied into with New York and Chicago. Very close relationships. For example, the underboss of Detroit currently is, they call him Chicago Tone. He's Tony LaPiana, and he's from Chicago. Detroit had married some daughters of New York wise guys and high-level bosses, which kind of solidified the combination of the relationship between New York and some of these other guys. Paul Castellano, the head of the Gambino family, was very close with Jack Tocco, who was the head of it was my great uncle, and he was the boss of Detroit for 40 years. So you have these ties there, but very quiet, kind of low key operation. It's kind of and I don't because everybody I talk about, and I've been on Vlad, was actually on Fox News National to talk about Jimmy Hoffa, and I can talk about some people who are dead, and I can talk a little bit about guys that I was involved with that might still be alive or might still be in the game. But mostly, if I'm sharing stories and telling stories about my past, it's about people who are dead or in prison, and it doesn't matter. On my YouTube channel, I got 110 episodes on there, which I drop almost daily. And they're basically stories about my life in the street before I went to prison for 13 years. And before I became a writer, before I was, in hindsight, I look back, and I never planned to have a YouTube channel. I thought I'd be that type of guy. And I never even thought my life was all that interesting, frankly. Then I started writing some stories down for promotional pieces for my books. These things called the Lindbloom Chronicles. It's a series of 21 short stories I write about my life before prison. And then they started to get tens of thousands of reads, like hundreds of thousands, even millions of reads. And I'm just like, wow, I guess this is kind of interesting. I can see why. But my life was so, the weird, crazy criminal crap in my life was so normal to me growing up and when I was a kid that even now I think it wasn't that interesting. But when in all reality, if I look at it objectively, like I'm just an outsider looking in, I could see wow, man, this stuff is kind of crazy. This guy lived one freaking crazy ass life. So I started recording these shows, and everybody seemed to like them, and find I get a lot of people who are very inspired, and this is why it plays into your show and your thing, are inspired by the fact that here I am, a very, very bad guy. You know what I'm saying? I never considered myself a horrible guy, but I shot people. I shot 6 different people, all in like a gunfight, self-defense up once. I shot a guy where he had jumped me with his boys, so I ran up and shot him a week later. Yeah. Didn't kill him. But what I'm saying, I never considered myself this horrible monster, but I did consider myself a very, very bad guy. And so then I go to prison and I'm like, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, do I want to continue to be a bad guy for the rest of my life? I mean, look where I am. I'm in a freaking cage, man, looking down the barrel of 13 to 50 years. This something ain't working, man. This ain't right. And then some things led to, you go to my YouTube and watch like my prison. I got a little sub-series I'm doing called Prison. I'm at part 3. I just published it. And it kind of tells you how I came to start writing my books. I was sitting there in the hole. I've been in the hole for months and months, fighting my case. I ended up in the hole in the county jail. And then I started reading, and I was a big reader before prison. That's the interesting thing. I just told Eric Shawn, who's the host of big, Fox anchor on Fox News. You know who he is, Eric Shawn?
Yeah, absolutely.
So he actually just pitched a show that would have me and Sammy the Bull and a couple other guys hosting the show called Wise Guys on Fox News. We would talk politics or whatever. But anyway, I was just telling him how back in the day I would read books all the time. And these freaking wise guys, I'd be at the Hazel Park racetrack or something, where it's nothing but freaking mob dudes there hanging out, and I go there to get work, meaning, there's always a bookie or a Shylock or somebody who's got somebody who needs to collect money, or somebody needs to get tuned up, or somebody's got something, this guy ain't paying up, and I walk in there and they'd see me coming in. They're like, okay, Alonzo's here. Freaking listen, this guy across town, he owes me $3,000. He ain't called me in 3 days. Go find him, get the money, get $500. I'm like, okay, easy money. It's never easy, but I'd have a book and I'd be sitting there reading a book, and they'd be like, you reading a freaking book, man? I'm like, yeah, I like to read. The freaking kind of weirdo are you, man? Always reading a book. I'm like, I like to read. So the funny thing is, I was, intelligent. I had a very high IQ, and I'm intelligent. And so in prison, I just said, man, the books that I'm reading aren't that great. They're okay, but if I would have wrote them, I would have wrote them this way and done much better. And done them this way.
Are you talking about the urban novels kind of books that spread around prison? Or
no, not just that. No,
those are horrible.
I don't read those. I don't read those. Those are just horrible. The Donald Goings and crap is just good, rich, good star, wannabe gangsters. It's a joke. But what I read would be like Sidney Sheldon and John Grisham and Tom Clancy, Robert Ludlum, my favorite authors. And I'm like, they're good. Some of them are even great, but on the average, they're just kind of average. I could do better. So that's when I started to write. So when I got to prison, I just sat down and started grinding. And, it took me a year to write my first novel. And it went over really well. Everybody read it. It was blown away. And then I sent it to the streets, have one of my cousins read it. He was blown away. So I wrote another one, which that book is, the second book was called A Rat's Tale, Tale, which is about this guy in Vietnam. It's 3 tours in Vietnam, and the name of their company was the Bravo Blue Rats, and that's why it's called The Rat's Tale. And anyways, this crazy story about this guy's 3 tours in Vietnam, and it's really action-packed and crazy. It's got a really crazy plot twist and all that. And I finished that, wrote another one. I just kept writing, man, for 13 years. And then when I walked out, the story with my wife is the interesting thing. I had 7 years to go, and my wife was perusing Facebook and saw my profile. I had my cousin start a Facebook profile for me. I didn't really know what Facebook was, it was all new, but I said, he said, maybe I'll connect you with some old friends and stuff. I had just kind of Dear John, my ex-girlfriend. I had been with a girl for 20 years, and she's kind of stuck around for 6 years. I finally said, just go on with your life, man. I got 7 years left. It ain't worth waiting for me. Just go. And I kind of knew she was dating somebody.
She didn't.
What's that?
You told her to go on? She didn't leave you by herself?
No, I told her to go on.
Good man. Good man. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I did care about her deeply, and I just didn't want her to be, and I could tell she was probably dating somebody. Things were different. I'm just like, forget me. And so just go on. And when I made a cut, I just made a clear cut, and that was the end of it. And I was kind of depressed about it, very sad. 20 years of my life gone. And I've still got 7 years in prison here to go. And I had no real support in the street. I mean, like once in a while, one of my friends would send a few bucks, whatever, but I had no support. And then one day I get a letter from some girl, some random girl, and she says, "Hey, I went to high school with you. You probably don't know me. I didn't get out much, but and now we know why, because she was raised Muslim. She couldn't even leave the house. You know, she had to go to school, straight back, and babysit her 5 sisters. That's all she did." Wow. She said, "You probably don't know me, but I know of you. I know who you are. You know, I heard of you." And she didn't admit at the time. All I heard was bad, that you were a drug dealing dude who smashed people's faces in. And I'm like, anyways, she says, "But I see on your Facebook that you're a writer and a new Christian." She's like, "Well, or a Christian." She's like, "Well, I'm a new Christian. And I actually work for a publisher in New York. It's academic publishing, but I know some people. Maybe I can take a look at your manuscript. Maybe if it's any good, maybe I can kind of help you get it published." And I was like, "Okay, cool." I didn't know who she was. I had never even heard of her. I thought I smashed it. To be honest with you, I thought she was some girl that I freaking hooked up with one time. You know what I mean? And I was like, "Yo, did we smash one night at this hotel?" And she's like, "Definitely not me." I'm like, "You sure?" You look like, she said, "Right?" She's like, "No, it wasn't me." So even to this day, I'm still a little not sure it wasn't her. She just won't admit it, but whatever. So she wrote me, and then I had a friend turn my book into a PDF and send her the book. This is where it gets interesting. So he sent her the book, and she blew through that 1,100-page manuscript in 3 days on her phone. Read it on her phone, couldn't put it down. She was at the grocery store, like in line. People were like, "Excuse me, ma'am, can you move forward?" She's like, "Oh, sorry." She's reading my book. So she read it in 3 days and then wrote me back and then said these words I'll never forget. She says, "You're the unicorn." I said, "What the hell's the unicorn?" And she says, "Well, in publishing, sometimes you have really good writers, but the story usually is not that great. Sometimes you have a great story, but the writing's not that great. But every once in a while, you have the unicorn who can do both." She's like, "You're the unicorn." And then she's blown away because she's like, "All I know is this guy was a gangster and a thug and a drug dealer and a beating people up. And here she is." My wife, just to set the tone for this, just so you get an understanding, my wife lived in this strange world with 5 sisters, so 6 total. And she really hated her life. And she found an escape in books. That's what she did. She read the whole little series, Little House on the Prairie series, by the time she was 5 or 6. Also, she would call her friends over and say, "Hey, bring your books over," just so she could read her friends' books. She would blow through books. It's all she did was read. She did that her whole life. When she got to high school, she started learning how to write, and she got a job in the bookstore, the local bookstore in our neighborhood, and like she ended up earning a literary scholarship. Well, her dad wouldn't let her take the scholarship because you got to stay home and take care of your sisters, little sisters. So she couldn't go. And eventually he tried to marry her off to some Lebanese businessman.
Because in Michigan, you guys have a lot of Arabs, right? In Dearborn.
Yeah.
Is he from Dearborn?
Well, no, we're not from Dearborn, but they have a lot of friends in
There's
Dearborn.
Still a lot of Arabs there, huh? Okay, yeah.
There's still a lot of Arabs.
Sorry to interrupt, yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of Arabs in Detroit. The Arab, like Dearborn is all Arab, but even the rest of Detroit has a lot of Arabs in the areas too. And not tons, but maybe 5 or 10% of the population. So there's plenty of them. Yeah, there's plenty of them. So he tried to marry her off to some doctor or something from California. Said, "If you don't marry him, then get out of my house." So she left. She had a boyfriend. She had been able to kind of sneak a boyfriend on the low, who was a pretty nice guy. And they ended up. So he left. She left, went and lived with her boyfriend, and then didn't talk to her dad for 20 years. But the boyfriend introduced her to the outdoors. She had never been camping, never been around a bonfire, never been out in the woods for a hike, never seen nothing. She just lived in, the suburb of Detroit her whole life. And so this guy, her boyfriend, kind of introduced her to this world that was like so beautiful and foreign to her. Well, this plays into what I'm going is she ended up leaving him because he was kind of a bump on the log. The guy didn't really want to go anywhere in life. And she's real smart. And she's like, she's brilliant, to be honest with you. So you compare somebody who's brilliant up with somebody who's not brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So
they can't relate on the mental level. So
exactly. So she sent him after 10 years. She kind of broke his heart and said, "I'm moving on," or whatever. And shortly after that is when she saw my Facebook profile, and I sent her the book, and she read the book, and so she started writing me on a regular basis. But there was no, like, I never, to be honest with you, man, she was the first girl that I never tried to mac on. I wasn't like throwing game. I had 7 years left, man. And I just left my girlfriend at 20 years. I was just sad and lonely and miserable. I'm in prison. You know, I'm like, I'm happy you like my book, you know, and thanks for writing me. It's nice of you to take the time out to write me. And then she started writing me, and then she's like, you know, like kind of saying, well, why do you want to live in this little town when you get out? I said, I'm going to live in this little town of Dekota. I'm like, well, I love to hunt and fish. I'm a big outdoorsman. She's like, oh, no way. I love camping. I love the woods. I'm like, yeah, man, it's like my dream is live in the woods. She's like, yeah, mine too. You know, I'd love to live up north, out in the middle of nowhere, in the country, in a little homestead or something. I'm like, yeah. And then now we start talking and writing every day. Before you know it, I sat down my 7th novel, I was 800 pages into this novel. I set it aside and commenced to writing her full time. Meaning I would write here about 75 pages a week of letters, and she would do the same. So she's sending me like 75 pages a week, back and forth. And over like 6 or 9 months, we just kind of fell in love with each other through love letters. It's crazy.
Were the calls too expensive? Is that why you guys were writing a lot, or you didn't have much time on the calls?
No. Well, that's one of the reasons, but I'm going to tell you the main reason, bro. Is because we're both writers. We're better with words. We're more articulate. You have a moment to formulate your thought and really think about what you want to say, and then have the ability to construct it in a way that's wittier and more impressive. And so we both wanted to impress each other. So we would get real fancy with how we delivered our words and like try to impress each other with our writing. And so we go back and forth, and it was, you know, it's what I did. We'd play crazy like trivia when it came to like, you know, all things like socioeconomic stuff and culture and history and science. And I'd hit her with the Latin terms of certain like animals and see if she could figure out what it was. And she'd hit me back. And I don't have Google, you know, all I have is a dictionary and an encyclopedia. And we just go back and forth, but we fell in love with each other's minds and each other's hearts. And then at like 9 months, she's just like, you know, I want to wait. I want to be the person that shows you the world when you get out. I don't want that to be someone else. I want it to be me. And I said, you know, I'd love it to be you, but I mean, geez, I got 6 freaking years left. You sure you're up for that? And she's like, I think you're worth it. I'm going to do it. So now she goes and tells her 5 siblings and her aunt, by the way, I'm leaving my current boyfriend. I'm leaving him because she had a boyfriend. I'm going to leave him, and I'm going to go live 5 hours up north out in the woods and wait for this freaking gangster who's in prison. Well, they thought she was freaking insane. And some of them still don't talk to her. They thought I was going to kill her for life insurance. I mean, it was ridiculous. But in the end, if you ask my wife, you see my wife, she's very, very happy. We're both super happy together. I adore my wife. She's my best friend. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. So, I mean, it's kind of the joke's on them. You know, they all thought she was going to end up like I was going to use her or a scumbag and maybe kill her or whatever. And the truth is, I love her. She's a woman that, listen, her brain and heart and personality is 1 in a billion, man. And just, I got so blessed and lucky that God plucked her down right in my lap while I needed her the most in prison, you know? And so that's what worked out. So we did get on the phone and start calling, which is, that's a kind of funny story in itself. I was on the phone with one of my paisans, and I said, listen, hang up, call my ex-girl, and see if she still got my cat. Because if she does, I want to have my new girl go pick up my cat and get my cat. So when I get out, I still got my cat Puffy. So I said, all right, I'm calling you back in 2 minutes. Hang up. I call back in 2 minutes thinking he's going to answer. I don't know, but he's got my ex-girlfriend on the phone. 3-way. So yeah. I'm like, yo, did you call her? And all of a sudden I hear her voice, my ex-girlfriend. She's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, what's up? And she's like, I was kind of a dick. I was like, listen, why are you on the phone? I'm like, she's like, oh, you don't want to talk to me? You don't even want to be friends with me? You don't want to talk to me? I said, listen, I am engaged to get married to an amazing woman when I get out. I'm over it. I'm just saying, you got my cat? She's like, I'm not giving up my cat. It's my cat now. I've had her for 10 years. I'm not freaking, nobody's coming to get my cat. I'm like, all right, well, whatever then. So I wanted to check. So God bless you. Hope you have a great life. Yada, yada, yada. And that was it. I wasn't too much of a dick, but I was just like, I didn't want to give her the impression that I was pining over her. So hung up. Now I tell my girl, my wife, my fiance, the story. She's really kind of heartbroken. She's like, so your ex got to talk to you on the phone, but I haven't even heard your voice yet. And that's when I said, you know what? I'm going to call you right now. And I called her and yes, we started talking and spent a ton of money on the phone. Yes. I mean,
that's a lot of money.
I'd bet you we spent, we over like the next 5 years, we probably spent, I don't know, 25,000 on the phone, maybe.
Yeah, they rip. That's one of the ways they make money out of people there. Who was putting money on your books before you talked to her? Were people putting money on your books, or were you just, how were you surviving there with food and stuff?
I had like, okay, so my dad would send like $25 a month, which really is nothing. I had one friend of mine who was kind of off again, on again, who had money. He would like occasionally drop 100 or 200, $300 in there. Then I had one friend, like my best friend, Billy. He'd just send money. He'd ask, how much do you need? I'm like, I don't want to ask for nothing, bro. Send me whatever you want. So sometimes, Christmas would come and he'd send me $300. But if I needed a pair of shoes or something like that, I'd hit him up and be like, yeah, man, I need some shoes really bad. And then the ones I got are like worn through on the bottom. I mean, I need some shoes. So he'd say, how much you need? I'm like, I don't know, $75 or something. He'd do it. But I didn't have much money. I didn't. I hustled. I ran dice games. I did stuff like that. I ran dice games, and that was one of the ways that I could always make money doing dice games and stuff like that. I could host a dice game.
Yeah, for the audience to know, just because most of my listeners have probably never been to prison, you've got to get some kind of hustle going if you don't have people putting money on your books. And if you do have people putting money on your books every week, then you're going to be a target because people are going to know that, you're making a lot of money. And if you're weak, they're going to try to take it from you. But
if you're weak. If you're weak.
Yeah, which happens to some people. But I wanted to ask you quickly, there's so many interesting things you said. So starting with the politics of the wise guys, that show. Have you noticed that most of the guys, at least on YouTube, that were ex-Italian mafia-ish, are conservative? Like most of them are Republican. Like John Elite is very well known.
Yeah.
Gene Barolo is too. Are you conservative?
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too. Okay, that's very cool.
Yeah.
So
I can't stand these liberal nutcases. Are you kidding me?
I live in California, so it's you
can
imagine what I deal with.
Guy.
Yeah, it's really tough.
Guy.
Another thing
that's tough.
It's really tough, man. It's really tough. I can't even get into it. I'll get upset. But I wanted to ask you another thing. So you live right now in the wilderness somewhere in Michigan, I assume, still, right? In Michigan, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of my dreams. Actually, I love the wilderness. I love like rivers. I love to be outdoors. And my wife grew up in France. My wife is French. So she grew up outdoors, so she doesn't appreciate it as much as me. I wish I could. I'm trying to convince her to move to like Wyoming or the Dakotas or something, and it's hard to convince her though. But how do you? So what do you guys go hunting together when you film those hunting expeditions?
Dude, listen, I am an outdoor fanatic, like freakazoid, almost obsession. My wife would be. She could come in here and give you a lot of freaking. Like back that up. I just got done hunting. The hunting season just ended yesterday. I hunted. It was 3 months long. The hunting season with a bow. I hunt with a bow for deer.
Because I can't use a gun, huh?
Yeah, I'm a felon. I can't use a gun. No. Yeah, so I have to use a bow. I hunted. I started hunting on I think the 4th of October. I gave it a couple extra days before I started. And then I hunted essentially every single day until the season ended. Every day, cold, rain, snow, storm. I was out there. So I hunted about 85 days probably. I did go for the Vlad interview. I went down to Detroit to film that Fox News thing I was on. They flew me to Detroit. I was gone for a couple days. Other than that, every single day. Now, my wife, I hunt on my own private property, which is basically behind my house. And so my wife's not really hunting with me. But when I go trout fishing, for example, which is probably my greatest passion in life, it is. I mean, trout fishing is my greatest passion. I just enjoy the reason I love trout fishing so much is because you're really out in the wilderness. In order to get the nice trout, and by nice, I'm talking just 10 inches. They average about 5 inches. You get a nice one, it's 10 inches. You get a huge one, it's 15 inches. But you can get them. Most people in their lifetime will never catch a 15-inch brook trout. I've caught 16 brook trout in the last 4 years that are over 15 inches. And this to give you an idea, to put this in perspective, I was having dinner one day at a restaurant. I don't even remember where I was, at a UP somewhere. UP means Upper Peninsula of Michigan, really remote. There's these two guys at a bar. I don't even remember where my wife was. I was alone. So I must have been up there by myself. Anyway, these two old men are here talking fishing, and I said, I'm like, you guys brook trout fishermen? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, let me ask you a question. Be honest. What's the biggest brook trout you ever caught? Don't exaggerate. Just tell the truth. How big was it? And they looked at each other, and I'm like, well, between the two of us, we got about 120 years of fishing, because they're like 70 years old. You know, he said, so we got 120 years of fishing. So between the two of us, we're 120 years of fishing. And they both said, yeah, 15 inches. And I said, would you believe it if I told you I've caught, at that point I had only caught 9. I said, would you believe I've caught 9 brook trout over 15 inches in the last 2 years? And they say, I call bullshit. And I said, well, just pull out my phone. I showed them pictures. I said, there they are. I started showing them. And they looked at each other like, how do you do this? And I said, man, I'm willing to sacrifice life and limb. I will crash through the jungle for miles, breaking brush, getting scratched up, covered in mosquitoes, climbing over branches and logs and trees. And dude, there's box elders, these little tiny creeks that get boxed in with these box elders, and you have to climb through them. You're like in the jungles of Vietnam, crashing through, and you're getting massacred by mosquitoes, and it's 100 degrees out in the sun, and but it's so beautiful. It's so pretty. This beautiful little creek stream, crystal blue water, crystal clear water. You get to the little hole right there, and you know that's the one. Like, there's definitely a big brook trout in that hole. Now, if you make the right cast and put the right presentation, you got them every time. And it's just exciting because you know you did it right. You got here, found the spot. Nobody else has fished here because it's so hard to get here. You flip a little worm right there, make the perfect cast, let it drift right into that hole, and every time you got it. And that's what I love. So I love it. So while I do that, my wife, she can't get back there and do what I'm doing. It's crazy. It's insane. It's straight gladiatorial. It's like you got to be a commando straight up to get there. The next morning, the next morning I wake up so stiff and sore and everything hurts because, you know, you're balancing on rocks and crap. But my wife will go out in the woods and look for berries and mushrooms. She's a forager. And so, yeah, she just goes out there, puts an audio book on, sometimes nothing. She just likes the quiet and peace and solitude. And she puts bear bells on her shoes, you know, little bells that jing-a-ling-a-ling every time she walks because you don't want to scare a bear, you know what I'm saying? As long as the bears know you're there. Yeah, bears everywhere.
Whoa.
Bears everywhere.
Oh, that's scary.
Oh, my wife.
The smaller ones, huh?
They're not that small. No, black bears get big. Yeah, they get pretty big. I think the state record in Michigan is like 650 pounds. So they get big. Yeah, they're not small. They average probably, you know, maybe 175 pounds, but they get big all the time. One day we were leaving a spot. Now I had been gone for like 3-4 hours, and we were really back in the wilderness. And this is where by the way, I caught my biggest trout. I caught like 6 of my biggest trout in this river because it was so far back in there. Huge ones I caught. And anyways, she went foraging, and I came back. And as we were leaving, I'm pulling out, and in the middle of the road right there, maybe 50 yards from the car where the car was, I'm like, hold on, pull up. I'm like, is that bear crap right there? So I pull up, open the door. This is this huge mound of bear crap, huge. And I'm like, dude, that's the biggest freaking, dude, that had to be a 600-pound bear that dropped that load. And it was still like, you could tell it just dropped. And Maria says, dang, I heard some crashing through the woods just about 10 minutes ago. I thought it was probably deer. I'm like, nah, that was a bear. You jumped, you scared the shit out of that bear for real.
The worst thing about being a felon, though, if you encounter a bear, you've got a bow and arrow. You don't have a gun. So you could really, listen, dangerous. That is dangerous.
I got a knife. Yeah. I'm going to tell you a funny story. Now, normally when I'm out doing that stuff, I don't have anything on me but a BB gun. I carry a BB gun.
Yeah.
I carry a BB pistol, which is still better than nothing. If a bear runs up on you and try to bluff you, you just pop him in the face a couple times. It'll probably turn him around, maybe. But I got a knife. This is a true story. I know I've told this story to people, and I'm sure they think I'm full of crap. They just don't believe it, but it's true. I had a bear once when I was salmon fishing. It was the first year when I got out of prison. I was way up in the UP, went there by myself. This is way out there. I don't know if you ever watched my Sasquatch story on my YouTube.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
You should. I got a Sasquatch encounter story that I talk about. This is where I was, in the same place. So it's like 15 miles back in the woods. And then I'm coming along and it's quiet, super quiet. And this beautiful river and a little bit of rapids and there's salmon in there. It's just surreal and beautiful, tranquil. And then I hear the sound of jaw going, like when a male bear wants to intimidate you, they snap their jaw. They just go crack, crack, and you can hear it go crack, 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 crack. And I heard it. It was only maybe 10 yards away from me, right next to me. And I'm standing in the river in my waders. I got waders on and a fishing pole in my hand. And I know what it is. I don't panic or nothing. Okay, that's a freaking bear right there. So I take my rod and like drop it in the water between my legs. And I got a big knife in my zipper thing on my waders. My waders right here, I got a zipper. I zip it open and I reach in, I pull the freaking knife out, I flip it open. It's got a big freaking blade on it. And you don't look them in the eye. You don't want to look them in the eye. You don't look. So I kind of turned my side and said, this is what I said. Now I know I'm really probably not in any danger, but this is what I said. I said, Bear, this can go two ways. I said, we can part friends, or I go to the hospital and you be my dinner. And what's it going to be? And like in my mind, I was already determined how I'm going to kill this bear. He's going to run up and go for my throat. I'm going to put my arm up, block it, jam this knife through his throat a few times. He'll let go and run off and die after freaking 20 yards. And I already got the whole fight going through this whole scene in my mind, how it's going to go. He's going to bum rush me and I'm going to freaking stab him in the throat, one in the heart, one in the neck and the chest. And he's going to be thrashing and rip my arm apart. I'll have to wrap my arm up and then go out of there. And
because you're so imaginative, because you're a writer. You already thought of the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. The whole thing went through my mind. I knew what was going to happen if it goes bad, but it was just like the freaking bear understood what I was saying, dude. As soon as I said that, it made like a huffing sound and went, boom, and turned around and ran off. Crash, crash, crash. Like he was trying to intimidate me for whatever reason. He decided he didn't like me. And I think he was probably just bedded, just sleeping. And then he got a smell of me, like lifted his head up and was like, frick are you just doing standing there, just walking by in the river, you know?
Do you guys have mountain lions over there or no? They're more around.
We do. This mountain lion, not as much. Yeah, there's not a lot of them, but they are around. People see them pretty often. Everywhere I've lived up here is people are like, you know, we see mountain lions. I've never seen one, but my neighbors have seen a couple of them. And I know like 5 different people personally who've seen them. And so you can't mistake a mountain lion from a bobcat. Like I've seen a few bobcats but never a mountain lion. I seen a wolf though. I saw a wolf when I was deer hunting one day. A wolf popped right over the ridge, full grown, like freaking 150-pound wolf, man. Could not believe it. I was going to shoot it, which is illegal, by the way. I could have got in trouble for that.
Because they hunted.
But yeah, so my wife.
They hunted most of the wolves down, I think, around the area, right? So it's illegal now. They're like protected.
Not in Michigan. Not in Michigan. They reintroduced wolves in Michigan about 40 years ago, right? 30, 40 years ago. They reintroduced them and they wanted to have about 50 wolves up in the Upper Peninsula, right? Well, that went bad. Now there's like 700 or 800 of them and they've killed all the deer. They wiped out the whole deer population. They basically collapsed the entire economy of northern Michigan because hundreds of thousands of people used to go up there to go deer hunting every fall. Now, these people, they don't go up there to go deer hunting because there's no freaking deer. Nothing but wolves up there. And plus, wolves kill people. Like people, a lot of people vanish. Like every year, like 50 people just vanish out in the woods in the UP, and it's the wolves. But I mean, the worst part is, let's say you had a hunting camp up in the UP that was worth $150,000 on 50 acres. And it used to have it. It's worth $150,000, right? That's before the wolves. Now it ain't worth 20 grand. So everybody who spent the last 30 years paying off this honey camp to get it to be, $150,000 value, it's worth 20. It's not even worth 20 grand. Nobody wants it because what's it good for? What good is a honey camp if there's no deer to hunt?
How much do acres?
Wolf did that.
How much do acres go around your area? Like sort of not near cities in Michigan. Are they cheap? Like, can you get a big land for affordable prices or no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got my house and 20 acres for 75 grand.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's what my wife and I are looking for.
Yeah.
We're thinking of the same thing. Hey, can you tell me something? Okay, wait. I gotta backtrack a little bit. One thing I wanted to know. So you're very different than me in one way. I mean, I read obviously a lot as well, but I'm not creative. And when I was a kid, I was sort of like your wife also. I, grew up with an Arabic father, didn't have a great childhood, and I used to read comic books. So I would read a lot of comic books and imagine stuff. What were you doing that developed your creativity and your imagination that allowed you to write fictional stories? Because that's something I can't even imagine doing. It's such an investment in a world you create in your mind. It's a beautiful thing. Or was it that created that in you because you had to create another world to live in, to not get engaged with that? Because just for the audience to know, in prison, if you get engaged with what's going on around you, you'll end up with life. It's very easy to end up with life. So for a guy to get out on time, for a guy to get out on time, he's got to reform himself. And I know we're going to talk about your spiritual reformation as well. But how do you get that creativity?
I mean, there's a lot of ways I could answer that, but if I'm going to be honest with you and just keep it forthright and frank, God gave me a gift. That's it. I mean, here's the thing. What's that?
You always been like that, even as a kid. You used to have dreams.
Yeah, I was always creative, like storyteller. I was also very good at telling stories, like standing in front of people and recounting a story that like a fight I got into or funny thing that I did or whatever. But like, dude, I remember, I would get caught. My girlfriend would somehow, catch me cheating on her, right? And be like, and I would make up this with my boy, be standing right next to me. And I would like, just like that, I would make up this crazy, elaborate, freaking bullshit story that was so crazy that there's no possible way that it couldn't be true. I mean, nobody makes up a story that elaborate to cover up for some bullcrap. And so my girl would be like, yeah, it must be true. And then my boy afterwards would be like, yo, bro, like, did you rehearse that and plan that? I'm like, nah, I just made it up on the spot. He's like, get the frick out of here, bro. Are you kidding me, man? You had me convinced. I'm like, I thought I was with you last night, but you had me thinking that we were somewhere else. So, I mean, but there's a kid out there right now who's about 14 years old. He's just getting into baseball. And that little kid is throwing about an 80-mile-an-hour fastball. And by the time he's 16 years old, that 80-mile-an-hour fastball is going to be about 95. I'm like, he don't know what he did to deserve that, but he's going to get paid millions of dollars for it. So there's nothing you can do to get that. So when it comes to like what I do as a writer, it's a 95-mile-an-hour, 100-mile-an-hour fastball. That guy said, here you go. Do what you will with it. I don't think the average person will ever be able to develop what I do. There's a reason why college professors who teach creative lit make $90,000 a year as a professor, and they're not making multiple millions of dollars a year as a best-selling novelist, even though they teach creative writing. So, I mean, if they could do creative writing well, then they would be teaching it in a college, you know what I'm saying? So those who can't teach. So me, I feel like, here I am.
Finding Forrester. Remember that movie, Finding Forrester? Have you watched it? It's a beautiful movie. You got to watch it with your wife. Oh, you'll love it. You'll love it. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
You got to watch Finding Forrester.
I will. I'll remember that. So in the end, I think if you haven't read my book, listen, I'm not a fan of tooting my own horn. I don't really like to do it. But anybody who's out there listening, I ask, just go to Amazon, go to Be a King in my name, Gunnar Lindbloom, To Be a King, and then read the reviews. If you spend a moment and just read the reviews of my books, they really say a lot. And by the way, they're all organic. You can't fake reviews on Amazon books. It's impossible. They're all verified reviews. And like even my own Facebook friends can't post a review on Amazon because they'll say it's biased because they have an algorithm that says, oh, you're friends with them on Facebook. It knocks it down. So my reviews are all real. And then if anyone's read the book, will understand what I'm trying to say here is that if you read my book, you're going to look at me and go, okay, this dude here, I mean, I know he's got a kind of interesting story, and I know he's got this kind of charismatic character on YouTube that he is, but none of that stuff means nothing because that dude right there is a real deal writer. He's a real novelist. That's his gift. That's his 100-mile-an-hour fastball.
What's the rating on To Be a King on Amazon out of 5 stars?
Perfect 5. The perfect 5-star review.
How many reviews?
between the two of them, I don't know, 150 or something.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, that's for the audience to know. When you look for books, people often ask me, how do you find a good book to read? Amazon's pretty reliable. If you find a book that's over 4 stars, and it depends on the popularity, obviously, but over 50 reviews, it's probably a good book. It's probably a very good book. That's how
I agree.
I chose most of my books. Hey, tell me something. For those of us that have never been to Detroit, what is the 8 Mile and 9 Mile and what is all that stuff that we all heard about around the world from Eminem? But later I learned, I've talked to some African American guys who grew up in those areas. What is that? And did you grow up around there?
Yeah. I grew up right there. Yeah. So you have 8 miles, the border of Detroit. And like Detroit is in Wayne County on 8 Mile. One side of 8 Mile, it's Detroit. On the other side of 8 Mile, it's Wayne County and it's Oakland County and Macomb County. So it's like a border. It goes all the way from the east side to the west side. It's like 20 miles. It's a 20-mile stretch that's the border of Detroit on one side and the suburbs on the other. It kind of defines where this hood or city ends and the suburbs begin. I grew up off of like where I was raised. So I lived in Grosse Pointe when I was a kid. It was a very wealthy enclave with my grandma and grandpa Toko. I lived there for like 7 years in a very wealthy area that literally is right on the border of Detroit. One side of the Alter Road is the ghetto, and the other side of Alter Road is $1 million mansions, and everybody's got a Mercedes in the driveway. It's bizarre. It's just crazy. I mean, it literally transitions. Then one road, poof, there's a fence. There's garbage on one side, and it's trash, boarded up houses and drugs and zombies. And on this side, it's perfectly manicured lawns and beautiful. It's bizarre. So I lived in that area, in Grosse Pointe for a while. Then I moved to a more like a lower middle class suburb of St. Clair Shores, which is at 13 Mile in Harper. And so basically, it just goes, it goes 8 Mile, 9 Mile, 10 Mile, 11 Mile, 12 Mile. And if each mile goes higher and higher, you're just getting a little bit farther from the city. The area tends to get a little bit nicer. There'd be less crime. There's less, just drugs. There's less problems.
The African American gangs that dominate Detroit now, are they like sort of like the Chicago types, like the Vice Lords and GDs and stuff like that, or is it do they have their own thing also in Detroit? I mean, this interview is not supposed to be about crime, but I'm just curious.
Detroit has their own gangs, very, very powerful black gangs. There's too many to name. There are Crips and Bloods and Vice Lords and all that. But the most powerful one I can recall is the BMF, Black Mafia family. That was Big Meech and his people. I met him a few times. We even hung out a little bit. But that guy, I think the feds believed he was worth like $400 million or something when they busted him. He had a mansion in Malibu and all kinds. But anyways, so yeah, one of the interesting things about that is the Detroit mob, particularly Tony Giacalone, was able to groom and prune some black drug dealers and teach them how to structure their organizations like a mafia family. And then they were smuggling heroin in from Sicily by way of Turkey. And then with the French connection type of thing, all pasta sauce, they bring it in drums of pasta sauce. And then there was this black dude named Frank Nitty Usher, and he taught him how to basically, his organization was literally mirrored off the Detroit mob family, was taught to him by the mob family, and how to use extreme force and aggression to enforce your will over the rest of the gangs in the city. And you're going to sell our drugs or you're dead. That's it. No, if you sell dope in this area, you're dead. It's our dope or nobody's dope. And they did that for a long time, man. And he ended up, Tony Giacalone, you have to look up that story. If anybody wants to, Bizarro. It's one of the most incredible stories in gangland history. The guy gets busted. He gets accused of killing 7 people. Then he freaking on appeal, he says that really he was one of the targets, and he convinced the murderers to not kill him because his family was going to track them down and kill all his family. So they let him go. And he was able to convince the jury that instead of him killing all these people, he was the intended target. It's crazy. The mob paid $1 million for his lawyer. Basically bribed his way out of it. They paid his way out because he was such a powerful asset in the drug game. This guy was making tens of millions of dollars every year for the Detroit mob selling heroin. So they wanted him back on the street and they got him out.
Now, about redemption and spirituality. What was it when you were in prison that, in for the audience that doesn't know, people when they go to especially long sentences in prison, sometimes the biggest group you'll notice is usually Muslims, Black Muslims. They're very organized and also very violent. They don't usually accept even the black gangs to challenge them and stuff like that. But there's also often Christian groups, and there's people that come into the prisons, pastors and stuff like that, talk to people. Did you get talked to, or did you hold a Bible one day? And the question is, was it out of a sense of guilt or a sense of purpose in life? Like, why am I here? What have I been doing? You know what I mean?
I had a number of spiritual incidents in my life that led me to believe in Christ, or led me to have my faith. I didn't know Christ intimately. I didn't know my religion. I just knew it was real. I'd seen miracles that are too hard to explain. You can't explain away a miracle. I mean, so I'd seen it. One of them was that I used to drive my crotch rocket motorcycle with reckless abandon, like I was untouchable every day, all day. I mean, I would drive insane, and I wasn't even that good of a rider. You know what I mean? I was pretty good, but not like some of my boys, like racers. Never had a close call, because every time I got on a motorcycle, I pray to God, please keep me safe. And I believed he would, and he did. But another crazy thing is I used to pray every day that I don't get arrested. First thing I'd do, get in my car, turn the music down. I'd say a quick prayer, and I'd start driving. I'd say, God, forgive me for my sins. Please, I'd pray for the world. I would pray for peace. I would pray for everybody. I would say, please keep me from going to jail today, yada, yada, yada. Well, over a 2-year period, I forgot to pray 8 times. Now, you're never going to believe this. I know it's going to be hard to believe, but all 8 times I got arrested. All 8, I didn't pray 8 times over 2 years. I forgot. As soon as they flipped the lights behind me, I was like, damn it, I forgot to pray today. And then I go to jail and bond out, whatever. Well, the final one was when I went to jail, for prison, which I actually prayed for. A couple of days before that, I just said, God, I'm tired of this life. I want out of it. I'm just tired. I can't do it no more. I mean, do what you got to do. And I kind of knew it would be jail or prison or something, but I didn't know it would be 13 years. And then like 3 days later, I was arrested on these cases and sent away for prison for 13, 15 years. Now, you
had a 13
to 15.
Oh, yeah. Wow. So you really were on the hook. So you got out on time. That's incredible. Yeah. So you didn't have any charges while you're in there. 0.
No.
Did you have to back down from in LA? They call it taking fades or refusing fades. There's kind of like an honor system among gangsters. Like they don't turn down any fades. But if you're like that, then you're eventually gonna get another crime while you're in there. And you get
nobody. I had close calls, a few. But here's the thing, man. In any prison,
swallow your pride.
What's that?
Did you have to swallow your pride and just?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes I did, but not in maybe the way you might think. But here's the thing, bro. Any prison is gonna. If you've been to prison, in any prison, they're gonna tell you this. If there's a guy in the yard, he's walking by himself. All right. Every gang is ganged up all over the place. It's the Mobites, it's the Latin Counts, it's the Crips, it's the whatever. They're all clicked together, strength in numbers. To me, they all look like a bunch of pussies. I'm like, really? You guys are freaking scared to walk the yard alone because you're freaking pussies. Now, all the OGs know that. All the old real gangsters are like, listen, you bitches, you came to prison and joined a gang because you're scared to walk the yard alone. Now, when you see an OG walking the yard alone, he's one of two things. He's either a bad mofo with these or whatever, or he's crazy. Well, with me, they kind of was like, he's a little bit of both, so I carried myself in a way that just said, don't F with me, I won't F with you. You know what I'm saying? And nobody did. Everybody got out of the way. And then rumor, it would get out there who I was and what I did. It wasn't even necessarily like the mob stuff, although that was out there too. It was more like, guys would go, that guy Gunner's a freaking badass. You know what I'm saying? I seen him demolish people in the street. You know what I'm saying? Or, whatever. So if you give respect and you stick to yourself,
If you give respect and you stick to yourself and you handle yourself as a man, they let you be. That's true. Yeah, that's a very good point. But you gotta have honor. Right. If you disrespect anyone, you end up at. Yeah, it's very true. Very true.
Yeah, and I didn't. I tried not to. I was always respectful. Man, I had a couple freaking douchebags that I would have loved to smash, and I almost got in a couple of fights here and there. But for the most part, man, listen, I'm a big kid. I'm a big dude. I'm, 230-pound muscle head, strong dude. They see me in a weight pit, freaking, deadlifting 500 pounds and squatting 500 pounds. They know I'm a big boy and I can handle myself. And then the truth is, there's a lot of guys. What's that?
How tall are you, by the way?
5'11".
Oh, okay, same height.
So there's a guy. Every joint has a couple of dudes who knew me from the street, who knew of me or knew me. So every joint, I was in 8 different prisons. And then those guys just tell the gang guys, it's my boy Gunner. I know him from the street. I seen him freaking wreck these guys in the street. He's real deal. I mean, he'll go that way. He'll go all the way. And I was always under the impression, bro, if you come at me with the freaking whatever, I'm ready to die. Are you? I'm prepared to die. Are you? And so
it's really incredible because, when a lot of people, when they go, especially with the 13 to 50, it's really interesting. I mean, you didn't have the L there, but still, you could have went 2 ways. You could have went in prison and been angry at what God put you in, and you could have went the total opposite way, which happens to a lot of people. Oh, yeah. Go in there and they get angry, and then they start, making something of themselves in what they call politicking in prison. But you went a totally different way, and that's a really exemplary thing. And that's, what we want to communicate to the audience.
Well, I was determined, man. That's the thing. I wasn't necessarily looking for redemption or thinking redemption when I started writing. I knew that I had a very unique gift. I thought my first book was going to be good, but when I was done with it, I knew it was really good. And then I'm like, okay, and everybody who read it in prison was blown away. It's like, wow, that was the best book I ever read. I've been down 20 years. I read freaking 100 books a year. He's like, I've read 10,000 books over the last 20 years. This is the best freaking book I read. I'm like, thanks, man. And I get another guy. He comes back and says the same thing. I'm like, okay, I'm on to something here. But I think I really, truly just wanted to live a different life. I'm just like, I'm over freaking looking over my shoulder all the time. I'm over dealing with scumbags all the time. I'm over lying and cheating and stealing and robbing. I'm over that. I don't want that. So how can I change it? Well, first of all, I knew I had to get right with God. So I knew I had to change myself spiritually and pursue that. And the other thing was, I knew if I just write these books, someday these books would present me with the opportunity to create a much better life. And they did. They did that before I even came home from prison. They helped me meet my wife, and then my wife waited for me and had a home for me to come home to. I'm not rich yet. I'm not even rich. I sold some books and I do all right. My apparel does all right. So I'm not destitute.
Yeah, by the way, that's the apparel, guys, for everyone to know. Our Thing Apparel. If you check out his videos, I'm going to link obviously your channel. You guys can go check it out. Support him. Yeah, anyway, sorry to interrupt you. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I own Our Thing Apparel.
You were saying something amazing. You were saying something amazing, which is it's almost literally the recipe I use to fix my life, which is number 1, spirituality. Number 2, doing what you love. You have to find a career, I think, that you enjoy doing the process and the destination. You can't just the destination. You can't just want to be rich. You got to whatever you're doing. And if you like that.
To get rich.
Yeah, that or even whatever, to get famous, to get rich, to get whatever, to get that house that you want, wherever. But you got to like the process, because if you don't like the process, your life will be miserable. You got to love it. You got to have passion.
No, you'll be miserable.
And that's how you flourish, right? And then the third thing that you did, which is exactly what I did too, is loyalty and having someone and love. Loyalty and love, with your wife, obviously. I don't know if you have also close friends and stuff like that, but that's what rebuilds a character, and that's what builds a happy life, I think. What do you think? That's the recipe.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. You nailed it pretty good, man. So first, spiritually get right with God, and for the right reasons. Second, find something that you do love and you're passionate about that doesn't feel like work. It feels like fun, and you can get paid from it down the road at some point, or you are getting paid for it. And third, and you nailed it, the most important thing is, when you're motivated by love, nothing can stop you. Nothing.
Exactly.
Nothing can stop. So if you're motivated, my goal was to create a life, use these books to create revenue and a life so I can give back to the few friends who supported me in prison and my wife. All right. So those are the ones that counted and showed me that I mattered, that they loved me, and they were sacrificed food and time out of their own pocket for me. They proved that they love me. So I'm going to take this talent that I have, and I'm going to build an empire so I can give it all back to them. So when you're motivated by love, anything's possible. You cannot fail. You will always win. The people who say I did this or did that, or even they're hooked on drugs or whatever. If you truly love somebody, right?
Yes.
And this is the person I love, I'm letting them down by being a drug addict.
Yes.
If you love them enough, you'll give up the drugs.
Yes. That's so beautiful what you just said. Oh my God. And you know what else? I think people are either governed by love or fear. There's two things. It's not really, whenever we beat, so you attack someone in whatever, out of ego or whatever, it's actually out of fear. And you can also have a career out of fear. You can have a career, I want to be rich because I want to protect myself. And it's about yourself, not about others, not about serving others. Or you can have a career out of love. And you choose in life either fear or love, right? And if you choose fear, you'll always be miserable. But if you choose love, well, we got to end it on this one because this is too beautiful. We got to end it on this, but you got to come back.
I will.
All right, we're going to have a reoccurring series. Wait, I'll stop recording right now.
I'd be happy to come back.